Skill Will module. In order to understand the Skill Will module, let's consider two students X and Y. X who love mathematics and Y hates the subject. For a class test, X didn't study the night before the exam and scored 80% in the exam. On the other hand, Y prepares the whole night for the test but still ends up scoring only 50% of the marks. Seeing this, one might simply say that X's brain is sharper than Y's, but that can be a wrong conclusion. Would it not be better to say that X's brain is more trained in math than Y's? Let's analyze this closely. If we analyze X's past, we would find out that in the past X must have had more exposure to mathematics. Source could be any. He might have found his father's old calculator on which he used to spend minutes doing some calculations daily, or maybe he used to solve math puzzles in newspaper or magazines. Doing all this, X must have developed a liking for the subject and must have practiced the basics of maths problems more than just anyone else. Somewhere somehow X has solidified his basic maths concepts and now his brain is friendly to maths and is able to connect the dots. Y must have skipped the much required practice of the subject, and whenever he encounters a maths problem, it's not a comfort zone at all, and hence Y freaks out. At the end of the day, Y cultivates an adverse attitude towards the subject which explains his hatred and non-performance in that subject. He's simply not able to connect the dot as quickly as X can. It's basically a small skill problem that Y has, but over the time Y has been able to identify the small issue, and now it looks like a big issue. Now all he does is to avoid the subject as much as he can, and this further intensifies the problem. So the reason why some students who want to perform and try for it and still cannot perform is this skill problem. That's one example. Another example of skill problem can be the way of studying not being efficient. Some students devote a lot of time to their studies but do not do it productively. These are all examples of skill issue. Now let's consider a different scenario. Max and Jack are two students. Max scores more than 70% in all the subjects. Jack hardly gets 50% and fails in some of the subjects. So does this simply mean that mental capabilities of Max are more than Jack? Analyzing this closely, one would obviously find out that Max keeps in touch with his studies more than Jack does. There can be one reason or more than one reason that motivates students like Max to devote more time to their studies. Some might have a very good understanding that being good at studies will directly help them build their career. Others might be doing it because their parents must successfully explain them that studying is the best thing one can do. Others might just be doing it for competition, others for fun. The list is endless. But students like Jack do not have any motivation to study. They just don't see studies as a fruitful use of their time. You can tell them that studies are important, but it will not really sink into them. They have developed an attitude towards studies and won't change it at any cost. That's will issue. Such students are just not willing to study. The Skill Will module is something which lets us identify whether a student lacks the will to study or the skill, and once identified, it can be worked upon. To know if a student has will issue, a test can be conducted. The test paper would have all the easiest but lengthy questions like unseen passages where the answers lay in the passage itself, or DMAS problems, which don't need much of the skills and must be done in limited time. If the student passes this exam, it would mean that the student does not have will issue. To know if a student has skill issue, another test can be conducted. The test paper would have all the interesting aptitude questions, puzzles of different kinds with no time boundation, and logical questions of all kinds. If the student passes this exam, it would mean that the student does not have skill issue. If there is a will issue, parents must be contacted and a plan of action must be chalked out, which will differ from student to student. If there is a skill issue, however, teachers must work with the student to fix it up. Focus must be on strengthening the basics of the student of every subject and must be done in a fun and interesting way.